Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host Raider, and this is the third part to the live stream, the 10/21/2025 live stream Q&A answers that I missed. Now, in my infinite fallibility, I have been looking at the live stream questions wrong. My apologies. So I've been re-answering things that have already been answered. So Deke has been kind enough to put everything that has not been answered in pink. They just responded to all of the questions and they uploaded all the questions. And then they said everything that was responded to was in blue and everything that wasn't responded to was in pink. So I didn't notice that. That's on me. So I've been re-answering questions. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be answering the things that have not been answered. Now, if you should find that your question wasn't answered on the live stream and we got it wrong somehow, just let me know in the comments section and I'll answer it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be starting out in the question and answer section. And let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. And then let me pull this up to where it's bigger. So the way that this should read is George's question wasn't answered. However, GC Jarhead's was answered. So I'm going to be going through the ones that are labeled like this. And there's a lot of them down here that did not get answered. So we're going to be just finishing this off today. So George. Will my entire claim stay at the San Juan RO now that I've been given the special team? Likely no. It will not stay in San Juan just because that special team has moved to, I want to say, Alabama. It is transferred to there. So you could potentially, there's like 5 different ROs that handle certain special teams. There's different ROs that handle special things, like radiation claims are done at Jackson RO. Louisville does, what does Louisville do? Camp Lejeune, I think. I don't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, I doubt it, George. I doubt that it will stay in the same area. Does this apply to BDD claims also, assuming this is the Philadelphia issue? It's hard to take this out of context, but the Philadelphia issue should be resolved now. So if your BDD claim now is being done at Philadelphia, hopefully there's enough. The Eye of Sauron is on Philadelphia, so hopefully they're doing things better there. But it's during the government shutdown currently. There's a lot of moving parts that could be doing things wrong. So, more. CUNE against me, PTSD, but diagnosed as other specified trauma disorder. 30% awarded. PTSD case study does not apply. Okay. So for this specifically, there is no a clear and unmistakable error only counts for whether or not the rater applied the laws, rules, and regulations. If your issue is whether or not the examiner diagnosed you correctly, because they diagnosed you with other specified trauma disorder and not PTSD, that's not a clear and unmistakable error, because the person that diagnosed you is a specialist. So that is within their wheelhouse exclusively to determine what your diagnosis is. The average person could not determine whether or not you had PTSD or whether or not you had other specified trauma disorder. So that is not clear as part of the C portion of the CU and E. So it might be clear and unmistakable that you had a case study, but it might not be an error for VA purposes. So, and the fact of the matter is you're granted currently. You might not be granted with PTSD, but you're granted. You're at 30%. There's always room to demonstrate that your symptoms are worse if they are factually worse. But I don't see the CUNE here. So let's scroll down. Patriot 1776. What about OSA secondary to service-connected rhinitis? Very rare. And that's 2015, right? So, okay. You have to be careful with the science that you cite. 2015 might not seem like that long ago, but in the scientific community, if something came out newer than that goes contrary to it, then the newest science wins. And you have one study, which, there is a link between allergic rhinitis and obstructive sleep apnea, but the causality of it might not be there. Science always evolves. So I would say if your claim was before me and the examiner said that, hey, look, I've researched, the veterans article and it's not really probative to me. It's 2015. We've since had this article here. There are many ways that the examiner can basically overturn your science, especially older science. Newer science, however, if I was the rater and I saw newer science on there and I was like, this is 2025, 2024, 2023. This is kind of newer stuff here that the veteran, if they used a 2015, like if the examiner used a 2015 article to overcome your 2023 article, I'd have an issue with that as a rater. Newer science beats out older science all the time. So that's kind of the way that works. All right, asterisk 5. Joined Navy, had to get out because of shin splints. Can I start a claim for benefits? Okay, had to get out. Are you talking about like you had a avoided enlistment? Like, how did you get out? Were you med boarded out? These are things that matter. Were you honorably discharged? If the answers to that are yes, I was honorably discharged for shin splints, then yes, you could get that. But keep in mind, shin splints are like what, 52, 50, hold on, 62. And then I want to say that they're, where's shin splints? 52, 56, 7? No, hold on. We're going to get there together, people. 52, 56. All right. Yeah, 52, 62. Yeah, there we go. This is it. This is shin splints. So 52, 62. I was right. See, never underestimate raters' ability to guess right. So yeah, this is how this is going to be rated. Typically, it's going to come out as 0. If you have pain, then that's a minimum 10% for each shin. You will also, it'll depend on, okay, so shin splints is kind of weird. Shin splints that are closer to the knee will get treated as 52-62. Shin splints that are closer to the ankle will get related to the ankle. But if you have any kind of knee condition, like 52-60, that, any kind of knee issue for the knee version of it, then that 10% for painful motion will get applied to the knee. So this is how you could get rated. I mean, technically you could get up to 30% for your shin splints per leg, but it's all dependent upon the evidence. So, and what did I do? Okay, there we go. So yes, you could get shin splints granted. Yes, technically yes. I went from step 7 back to step 3. What worries me is it happened to my PTSD and anxiety claim. What are the odds 2 doctors messed up? It might not be the doctors. Okay, so PTSD has this set of behaviors that are unique to it. So an examiner can say that a stressor, like they have to determine what stressor out of all of the stressors that you've reported could have caused PTSD. the PTSD that they cite that you have. The problem comes back to is once we receive that, we look to see what stressor the examiner said caused your PTSD, then we have to prove it. So sometimes when it goes back to step 3, it's to get more information about, like, hey, look, we need to verify that stressor. And that's typically what you'll see with PTSD, is that it'll go from step whatever back to step 3 because not all of the required development to prove the stressor happened. Robert, Raider, I have my exit exam tomorrow. Other than listing everything, any advice for me? Yeah, list everything. Identify everything that's wrong with you. And some people will be like, oh, look, he's trying to game the system. Look at that. You know, there's some Washington Post person that's probably hearing me say this right here, going, listen to that. He's trying to get him to get everything. Look at that. It's not fair. Or, I mean, that's one way that you could look at that particular example of what I'm trying to say. Or you could say, look, if you have any pain, conditions, symptoms that are chronic in nature, you know, like that, then list them, because guess what? On your enlistment contract, they have they break it, they buy it clause on there. That's why we all signed up. We signed up because they told us that if they hurt us, they will compensate us for hurting us. It's not my opinion on it. It's in the contract. So yes, I say, and this is me telling you, have them honor the completeness of the contract. Identify everything that hurts on you, everything that's wrong with you. Yes, you do that. So that way you could subsequently file anything that they diagnose within a year from releasing from active duty. You can file for those claims. And because you said it on your exit exam, you know, it would be an in-service complaint at that point in time, and you could get it granted later on. More again. Oh, wait. Did I skip that? I feel like I just had a stroke. I think I skipped something. Anyway, I already answered this one. I skipped this one. My bad. The peach issue here is just hard for me to read. Okay. Feist. Wait. Feist. Okay. Feist. We'll go with that. Can a VSO see and point out DBQs that are not yet rated? Technically, if they have access to VBMS, which not all of them do for some stupid reason, I'm trying not to swear. That one almost made me swear. Yes, they can, if they have access to VBMS, and if the DBQ has been uploaded to VBMS, then yes, they would be able to see it before the rater would. Because what happens is that once the exam comes back, it either triggers it to go directly to a VSR who reviews the accuracy and then sends the claim RFD, or the claim has to wait for the suspense to close, the suspense that was assigned to it, like a 30-day suspense. Wait for that to close, and then it'll automatically trigger it to go back to have a VSR once again review it to see if it's substantially complete, and then sent to a rater. Or potentially, if it's not substantially complete, sent back to the examiner to say, hey, look, you forgot to do this, that, or the other. Pit stealers. Putting in a claim for mental health with a nexus and DBQ from Dr. Sharma. I like Dr. Sharma. Should I wait to put in a claim for migraines secondary to mental health? I might. Just keep in mind, like, look, if you're putting in a private DBQ, even from Dr. Sharma, you need to explain all the things that I've talked about in all my videos, culmination of private DBQ stuff. You know, you need to submit the 4138 saying that this is not fraud. I'm just, you know, this is the reason why I went to this person. This is the evidence that I gave them. I've done that in my own personal claim. I said, look, it's not fraud. I just did this because of X, Y, and Z. I had good success. It's, you know, if they're going to find something wrong with it, they're going to find something wrong with it. And no matter how much you prepare for it, if you're over 100 miles away from the doctor, you need to tell them why that you went to this person. and it was a telehealth appointment. I had them do an evidence review. I had them do, a intake assessment on me and review and see, and, normal stuff. But should you wait? Waiting won't hurt anything other than they might want to send you to a separate exam for migraines. So doing that, they might want to also send you an exam on this. I would almost submit this mental health claim itself. Let them do the sufficiency review on it and whatnot. And then after, like, if it goes to step whatever, where it goes to the rater, like step 7 or something, because if they accept your private DBQ and private medical opinion on its face, then it should go directly to rating. If you notice that it does that, then I would submit the other claim. I get concerned sometimes that because they're going to order an exam for this, they might just order you a new mental health exam and just disqualify your private DBQ and private medical opinion. So I might separate them out. Do this one first, and then do this one maybe like after it goes to the rating. It's just there's no logic to it other than I don't trust that they won't top sheet and just get you an exam for both of these things and just ignore Dr. Sharma's private DBQ and private medical opinion. All right. Rater, can I submit migraines as secondary to tinnitus? You can. It doesn't have a high probability of success. It will come down to the individual examiner's bias, medical training, and overall just perception about whether or not tinnitus can cause migraines. And the overall times that I've seen it successful is relatively low. Because you have tinnitus, which can't be physically tested, and you've got migraines, which I guess they can be tested on an fMRI, but they normally can't be tested. This is you taking your word for it, them taking your word for it, them taking your word for it, them taking your word that these two cause these two. There's a lot of opportunities for the examiner to go, yeah, I'm just not feeling that. I don't know if that makes sense, but I personally got my migraine secondary to my anxiety disorder because I was able to document how I would have a panic attack, and like more often than not, subsequently, like 20, 30 minutes afterwards, I would have a raging migraine. It was just kind of a, correlation of symptoms. So that's how I was able to win mine. Now, if that fact pattern matches yours, then cool. But if the fact pattern matches that your migraines are secondary to your tinnitus, you might, like, one of the barriers to this is going to be, okay, if your tinnitus is constant, then what causes you to have a migraine? What's different about it that causes you to have a migraine? Like for mine, I'd be like, hey, look, I don't always get a migraine after panic attack, but whenever I have a raging panic attack, that's whenever I appear to get them more often than not. Like, versus, is there any other reason why you're getting a migraine? Like that's the issue that you're going to run into here is the examiner's alternative etiology reasoning. Like they have to say, could it be caused by anything else? Well, because tinnitus is constant, what's causing it? What's the mechanism? That's another thing that they get kind of sideways about is what's the mechanism that caused it? Okay, that's it for that. Moving on. Is GERD still a compensation I can claim? I mean, it is, but it's not as it doesn't go as far as it used to. Like right now, unless you have esophageal strictures, and that's very specific. That's very niche. Not very many people have esophageal strictures. So 10% is the maximum. And even then, it's subjective whether or not you should even get the 10%. Because it says in the rating decision, like it says that you have to have strictures, historical strictures, and be on medication. What a lot of raters appear to be doing is they appear to be just seeing if you're on medication for GERD, and they're not noticing the stricture part of it. So you're kind of getting granted 10% erroneously for the most part, unless you have strictures. So, because like, look here, I'll show you. 7206. So if you look here at the 10%, see where it says documented history of esophageal strictures that require daily medication? So this is the part where a lot of raters are misunderstanding this and giving you a 10% because they say requires daily medication. They'll have a diagnosis of GERD and they'll see daily medication for it, and they'll check the box for daily medication, but they won't see that technically QRT could call an error on that and say, like, look, he doesn't meet the historical strictures requirement, so you should have never have given him 10%. The way GERD is now is it should be 0% unless you have some kind of strictures. That's just the current reality of it. And I'm sorry for that. Okay, Carl, to connect migraine service connected to PTSD, should I only reference medical treatment for migraine after my 2022 PTSD diagnosis? Experienced PTSD for many years post-service, but not diagnosed until I would put it into context. So I would say, look, I've been having PTSD since this time. I've been having panic attacks. It didn't just manifest whenever I was diagnosed. I was having it beforehand. And my PTSD, if this is your fact pattern, my PTSD manifested around this time. And after that, I started having, I started having migraines, because it's just because you were diagnosed in 2022 doesn't mean that I wasn't having any symptoms until 2022. I was just skipping along and then tripped over some PTSD. Like, that's not the way it works. And the examiners understand that. So especially where you can be like, I was having anxiety during that time, evidenced by, I was having anxiety well before that, evidenced by, my interactions socially, my interactions at work, my so-and-so. Raider HQ question. Could you, in your personal opinion, explain poking the bear for veterans that are 100% PNT and still want more, put in more claims? Okay, so the term poking the bear just means that you're raising something to issue that could put your 100% in jeopardy. Now, there are certain time periods and certain instances in which you may want to file additional claims that have no personal gain right now, but they might have gain in the future. Now, what's an example of that? An example of that would be, like, let's say you have 100% for mental health, right? And you have sleep apnea, you've got, your knees service connected, you've got all this stuff service connected. What could be a value added? Well, let's say that your combined rating, actually, hold on. Let me adjust that example just a little bit. Let's say you're 100% service connected for mental health and you're 50% service connected for sleep apnea. Those are the only two things you're rated for. Well, there's value added to filing additional things, because if you get to a combined 60% other conditions, then you would qualify for additional benefits of special monthly compensation, statutory housebound, SMC, S1. So that would be an additional benefit that submitting a few more claims might help. As another SMC, let's say that you're 100%, you've been 100% a while now, and you get FSAD, female sexual arousal disorder, if you're a female, or erectile dysfunction, if you're a male. Then if you have either one of those, that's additional monthly benefits for SMC, special monthly compensation K. So that might be a reason why you might file additional claims. And another reason why you might want to file additional claims is, let's say that you are a more seasoned veteran. You're getting up there in years, right? You're an older veteran. And let's say you're starting to have heart issues. Now, your heart issues are not service connected, but let's be honest with ourselves. The heart might come into play with being the reason why you pass away. So you're thinking about your family, you're thinking about, your spouse, and you want to make sure that if you do pass due to the heart condition, that you at least have it service connected, so your spouse can get we call it widow's pension, but the DIC. That's a reason why you would poke the bear. is if you have a medical condition that you could get service connected that could be the cause of your death, you want to have that service connected. So now, what is not a good idea to poke the bear? Well, you know what? I've got anxiety and depression, and I want to claim PTSD because I need them to validate that I have trauma. Because the T part of PTSD is trauma, and I need them to admit that they caused me trauma. That is not a good idea. There's no value added to that. That is a personal thing. I understand it though, the validation that you want from having the accurate diagnosis. But having the accurate diagnosis can take everything away from you because you reopen a claim that shouldn't be open. You're touching your 100% when you shouldn't touch it. There's no reason to touch it. This is for self-gratification. Now, if that's the hill you want to die on, fair enough. But just keep in mind that you are poking something that shouldn't be poked for no value added other than personal satisfaction. So if you're going for I'll just summarize with, you have to determine whether or not the value added is worth it. You have to do a cost benefit analysis. What is the value added by poking the VA with this, by submitting a new claim? Will that cause my 100% to be raised to issue? Will it drag in something that is service connected already that could cause me to lose my 100%? Are you TDIU? Do you want to become a natural 100%? Has this 10/29/2025 hearing with what's his name? Lieutenant Dan. With Lieutenant Dan, did Lieutenant Dan scare you? And you want to go with a natural 100% because Lieutenant Dan was talking negatively about TDIU, right? Lieutenant Dan, and maybe that scared you. Fair enough. I could understand that, doing an increase if the evidence warrants it. But cost benefit analysis is what you want to do. All right. Dry nasal passage, bloody mucus most of the time, pain in nostrils, and stuffy. Could this be TERA? No. TERA. Okay. This could be dry nasal passage, bloody mucus most of the time, pain in nostrils, and stuffy. That could be sinusitis. Could sinusitis be caused by TERA? Yes. Could it be rhinitis? Yes. Could rhinitis be caused by TERA? Yes. TERA is element 2. TERA is a theory of service connection that can actually, let me back that up. TERA is a theory for service connection. TERA is not a disability. In order to get granted for TERA, you still have to have a current diagnosis, the chemicals that you were exposed to, and a doctor that says that the chemicals that you were exposed to caused you to have the disability that you are claiming. So be careful with this, Douglas, because if you claim TERA, they're going to deny your claim because you didn't state a diagnosis you did state symptoms that you have, but it could be linked to TERA. I'm just going to cut that out because, yes, I didn't even read it right. Yes, it could be linked to TERA. Yes. The only thing that's not linked to TERA is like mental health. And I should restate this. There are exceptions that can be overcome. So mental health, joint conditions such as strains, sprains, ligament tears, things like that. Those are things that no matter how much Windex you put on your elbow, it's not going to tear a tendon. There's certain things like mental health, hard to get due to TERA. But yes, these things could get due to TERA. Sorry. I'm still disgusted with myself for making a Lieutenant Dan joke about Mr. Gade, but it's fine. Buddy Light. How long does it usually take for the VB? No. Unknown. As long as it takes. Welcome back. Is it possible to you'd have to heavily redact it. I don't want to even know if you're male or female. I want to know nothing about you. I don't want to know where you live. But also keep in mind, you could snip it. Just snip the part of the benefits letter that you want me to look at and email me. Yeah, that's fine. But I just can't see your name. I can't know anything about you. Midnight Light. Does anyone know how FDAV as a whole, or I don't know. Patriot, part one to confirm. Well, we're almost done. Okay. Part one to confirm. In my case, the rating decision was finalized. My private medical opinion arrived the day. I think I answered this one. Part two says was in the VA's possession before the notification sent. Yeah, the DRO will probably, yes. I would do a higher level review and say, hey, look, my I had this evidence that wasn't considered in my rating decision. Jason, I was stationed at Sierra Army Depot and was around nuclear weapons as my MP training on top of bunkers. Would that be covered under TERA? Yes, it would be covered under TERA. And sorry, my dog is scratching her ear on the ground, groaning. Zoe, please stop. I know. Okay, let's keep going. I filed a higher level review questioning an intent to file. Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, that probably didn't end well. I got a letter stating that the condition was not eligible for a higher level review because the claim had not been yet decided. Am I confused? Okay. So if they sent you the wrong letter, but you cannot directly tell them that it's due to a higher, you can't tell them that it is directly due that you're wanting to talk about an effective date. In order to question an effective date, you have to call a clear and unmistakable error. The thing that you should have done is you should have called a higher level review to talk about the condition that did not get the intent to file correct. And then once you got to the higher level reviews informal conference, then talk to them about the fact that the intent to file was not utilized correctly. But if you tell them up front that you want to talk about an effective date, they will deny your higher level review for it. So just keep that in mind. And then I'm just going to do a couple more and then we'll call this one and we'll do another video after that. So CMP exam for PTSD, but diagnosed other specified trauma disorder. I think I already answered this. Currently diagnosed with PTSD and therapy. Lawyer says, let the supplemental play out. I say, don't touch it. I say, like, do not touch PTSD. Do not touch anything. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. The fact is you're service connected for mental health at 30%. That's all that matters. You could be diagnosed with schizophrenia, schizotypal, bipolar, borderline. It doesn't matter. I have seen people with adjustment disorder that rate higher than with people with PTSD because the symptoms dictate how highly your percent is. The diagnosis does not matter for your rating decision. Diagnosis plays no factor in how high you are rated. Do not chase PTSD. Do not chase it. If they gave you other specified trauma disorder, cool. Take it to the bank. Don't chase it. Because guess what? You will snatch defeat from the jaws of victory if you keep messing with this. It doesn't matter. The fact that you're in therapy for PTSD it doesn't play a role in anything. It doesn't matter. I know that that's hard sometimes for people to understand, just in the fact that it's like, look, I have PTSD. Please acknowledge that I have PTSD. It doesn't matter. They could say that you have hurt feelings syndrome. I'd take it. At 30%, I'd take it. Because the diagnosis doesn't matter. It's like, whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter. The same thing with mental health. Is the fact is you got granted for something in mental health, cool. You meet criteria. You're good to go. You can... Now the symptoms will dictate. Now that you're service connected, the symptoms will dictate how severe, what percentage you get, not the diagnosis. So please consider that. And then John Rader, what rating do you have to be for TBI? What? I have TBI rated at 70% and SMCL. I don't know how. Oh, okay. I don't know how you do your YouTube channel, but it is greatly appreciated. Okay, I mean, do you mean SMCT for TBI? Rater, what rating do you have to be for TBI? I mean, you have TBI rated at 70% and you have SMCL So I mean, you're good. If you're talking about SMCT, I honestly don't know. I'm not a TBI SME. So there are special subject matter experts that just do TBI that they assign SMCT, and I assume that you're talking about SMCT for TBIs. I don't know what the criteria is on it. Sorry. And the final one I'm going to do, and I'm going to stop here, and then we'll do the rest of these in a different video. But OSA led to what? AFib? Okay. Intern led to severe tricuspid regurgitation and finally led to chronic congestive heart failure. Should I expect 100% PNT? That's going to be for the doctor to decide, user. That's going to be for them to decide. So if I go to, so I'm not going to, 6847 or something, obstructive sleep apnea. 6847, yeah. So chronic respiratory failure. So cor pulmonare you might be able to get, but this has to do with respiratory failure, not heart failure. You would have to have, in this circumstance, a medical opinion showing that OSA led to AFib. You'd have to be granted for AFib. Then you would have to have a separate, once AFib is granted, then you would have to do a secondary of tricuspid regurgitation secondary to AFib. And then after you got tricuspid regurgitation service connected, then you'd have to have chronic heart failure as part of the tricuspid. Well, actually, this wouldn't need to be separate. So if the tricuspid regurgitation diagnosis included the heart failure, then this could get, based upon the Mets, could get you service connected for the heart condition. So let me just 7,000. So you could get to 100% if your Mets interview was less than three or less for your heart failure symptoms. If you had heart failure, so you can have heart failure symptoms all the way down to the 30%, actually 10%. But your Mets will dictate it. So there's a lot of moving parts on this. So yeah, I don't. It would be premature to expect any specific percentage because there's a lot of moving parts here. Anyway, that's about all I got for you in this video for part 3, and I'll put out part 4 today later on. Anyway, thank you. Raider out.